If it's not hidden fees and higher fares, then it's being crammed into a space too small to ever be comfortable. If it's not higher cost to check a bag or choose your seat, then it's airlines masking the true cost of travel with hidden fees that trick passengers into purchasing more expensive flights. And just weeks ago, we all bore witness to one of the most egregious behaviors I've ever seen towards a peaceful, paying customer. I'm referring, of course, to the infamous video that captured a United traveler being beaten, brutally injured, and literally dragged off the flight. Not because he was a security risk, not because he threatened the safety or comfort of his fellow passengers, but because United wanted its employees to have priority over its paying passengers. Like most Americans, I was disturbed beyond belief by the video captured that day, and it's certainly been a wake-up call that the airline industry is desperately in need of. That's why last week I joined several fellow senators, Senator Booker and others, to introduce new legislation to bring about that change. The Tickets Act, which stands for Transparency, Improvements, and Compensation to keep every ticket holder safe, includes several common sense reforms to better protect travelers. First, the bill prohibits airlines from removing boarded passengers unless there is a safety, security, or health risk. Second, it eliminates the $1,350 cap on compensation that airlines can offer passengers on overbooked flights. And third, it stops airlines from burying their bumping policies into the fine print. That means requiring airlines to have their voluntary and involuntary removal policies printed on passenger flight receipts and posted at airline gates so that consumers are kept well informed. It also requires flight crews seeking accommodation to check in at least 60 minutes in advance, not wait until passengers are already seated and ready to fly. And finally, the Tickets Act directs the Department of Transportation to review current overselling practices and determine whether we need federal regulatory changes. Now, I appreciate that United has recognized the seriousness of what transpired on Flight 3411. The company is voluntarily making some of these changes, like ensuring crews are checked in at earlier times, offering customers greater compensation, and reducing their overtime practices. But let's face it, many of these poor practices are pervasive throughout the industry. We want to see higher industry standards adopted by every airline to ensure that no one is ever treated again like Dr. Dow. And we need to do more than focus on one incident. We need to look at the broader picture. It's not just one airline, but the entire industry that needs a reality check. How many more airplane videos do we need to see a crying mom clutching her baby or a gentleman being kicked off a flight for using the bathroom before we do something about it? Most businesses live by the principle that the customer is always right. But ask any traveler who's ever tried to right a wrong by an airline, it's David versus Goliath. We see an industry sacrificing the comfort and respect of their customers, putting profit over people. Need to check a bag? That's a fee. Need to travel with your pet? That's a fee. Want a seat next to your spouse? There's a fee. Meanwhile, economy passengers are squeezed together like sardines just to sell a few more tickets per flight. And in Washington, the airline industry is spending millions to lobby for the repeal of the full fare advertising rule so that they can mask the true cost of flight from customers. We saw the industry even try to shrink the size of carry-on bags and force more people to pay to check luggage, a move that I was proud to help shame airlines out of doing last year. Unfortunately, many of the changes customers want to see are unlikely to occur voluntarily. And while Washington has spent decades deregulating the airline industry, I believe the members of Congress and officials of the Department of Transportation still have a real responsibility to protect the public interest. I have spent years fighting for better treatment of American travelers, and I hope that more of my colleagues in the House and Senate are finally ready to join us. The time is ripe for for action. This September, current authorization for the FAA expires. Instead of writing federal aviation policy to make life better for the airlines, let's focus on making life better for the people who travel with them. That's why I'm pushing for further enhancements to the FAA bill, and why I intend to reintroduce my own bill, the Real Transparency in Airfares Act, to double the fines for violating the full fare advertising rule. I've also co-sponsored a bill to establish minimum size for seats so that we can ensure not only the comfort of passengers, but also their ability to exit a plane quickly in case of an emergency. And I'm going to continue urging the Department of Transportation to put rules in place that ensure full disclosure of all those ancillary fees. Fees for things that used to be included in the price of a ticket, but today are used by airlines to mask the true costs of flying. And guess what? All those tacked-on fees go straight into airline industry coffers, tax-free. Now, there's a loophole you can fly a 747 through. The Trump administration's decision to suspend and review these proposed rules is just another needless giveaway to the airline industry. Now is not the time for review, it's the time for action. Congress has to seize the opportunity to write an FAA bill that begins to level the playing field for passengers. It's time we start reversing the years of customer neglect that have many people dreading traveling at all. What happened on United Flight 3411 was unacceptable, but we still have a chance to ensure something good comes out of it. Our constituents don't have corporate lobbyists. They depend on their elected representatives to be their voice. It's our job. And I'm hopeful that this can be the turning point that inspires my colleagues in Congress to put the needs of their constituents ahead of the whims of airline executives.